Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into a fast, moving and dramatic situation unfolding across Eastern Europe. One that has left hundreds of Russian trains stranded, disrupted major trade routes, and intensified the already tense geopolitical landscape. Poland's decision to block the Belarus land bridge has created a massive ripple effect. And in this video script, we're going to break everything down in clear and simple terms. We'll explain what happened, why it happened, and what it means for Russia, Belarus, Europe, and the global supply chain. So let's get into it and unpack exactly how this crisis began and why the consequences are bigger than they first appear. The Belarus land bridge has long served as a vital artery for trade and transit between Russia and the European Union. For years, it has acted as the shortest and most direct path for cargo moving across the region. But overnight, everything changed when Poland halted all rail border crossings with Belarus. This sudden shutdown didn't just slow things down. It brought everything to a complete standstill. Hundreds of trains, many of them carrying essential goods, industrial materials, and commercial cargo, are now stuck, unable to move forward or return. The line is backed up, the schedules are shattered, and the economic shockwaves are continuing to spread far beyond the immediate area. What makes this situation even more dramatic is the political tension underlying it. Poland's move wasn't random or technical. It was a deliberate response to growing security threats, political friction, and ongoing disagreements with both Belarus and Russia. For months, Poland has accused Belarus of facilitating hostile actions across its border, including migration pressure and hybrid operations. Combined with Russia's ongoing regional activities, Poland's leadership saw the closure as a necessary step to protect its interests. This has turned a logistical problem into a wider diplomatic crisis, one that has pulled in multiple governments and sparked heated responses. For Russia, the consequences are immediate and painful. Russian exporters and transportation companies are suddenly facing delays that could last weeks. Freight that was expected to reach Western European destinations is now stuck on the tracks. Goods that were supposed to be processed and delivered are no longer moving. Every hour that passes adds financial losses and logistical headaches. Some companies are desperately trying to reroute shipments through alternative corridors, but those routes are longer, more expensive, and already congested. What used to be an efficient highway of commerce has now become a blockade with no clear timeline for reopening. Belarus is also feeling the pressure. The country's economy relies heavily on transit fees and the flow of goods through its railway system. The shutdown has cut off a major source of revenue and placed Minsk in a politically vulnerable position. Belarusian officials are blaming Poland for escalating tensions, while Poland argues that Belarus created the situation through hostile behavior. This disagreement has made cooperation extremely difficult, and the impacted trains remain parked in uncertainty. With each passing day, Belarus loses more economic leverage and finds itself deeper in a political standoff. On the Polish side, the government is leaning heavily on national security arguments to justify the shutdown. Polish authorities have said that the border crossings with Belarus pose risks that can no longer be ignored. They argue that closing these routes is not just a political statement, but a protective measure to reduce exposure to threats. Critics of the move worry that it will harm European businesses and disrupt supply chains, but supporters believe it was necessary to counter hybrid pressure coming from the east. For Poland, this is not only about trains, it is about sovereignty, borders, and strategic defense, Meanwhile, the European Union is monitoring the situation closely. EU officials understand the economic impact of the disruption, but they also know that Poland's concerns have been building for a long time. The EU now faces the challenge of balancing security with stability, and that balancing act is becoming more complicated as the crisis drags on. Some European industries are already reporting delays in shipments coming from Russia or regions that depended on this land corridor. Manufacturers who rely on materials from the East are warning about possible production slowdowns if the blockage continues. As for global supply chains, the timing could not be worse. The world is still dealing with shipping bottlenecks, logistical issues, and economic recovery challenges. The sudden halt of a major rail link adds more pressure to a system that is already strained. Trains are one of the most efficient and cost-effective methods for transporting goods across continents, and losing access to such a critical route could force companies to rely on slower, more expensive alternatives. Some businesses may shift to maritime routes, while others may attempt trucking, but each option comes with complications. What's happening in Eastern Europe today will be felt by consumers across the world in the coming weeks. This crisis has also created intense political messaging from both Russia and Belarus. Russian officials are accusing Poland of launching an economic attack and contributing to regional instability. They argue that Poland's actions will harm everyone involved, not just Russia. Belarus, meanwhile, claims that Poland is acting under pressure from Western powers and using security concerns as an excuse to derail cooperation. Both countries insist that the blockade must be lifted, but neither Poland nor the EU seem willing to reverse the decision in the near future. Behind the scenes, alternative routes are being discussed, but none of them can fully replace the Belarus land bridge. The northern routes through the Baltic region are limited and face their own political challenges. The southern corridors are longer and more expensive. Building new logistics lines takes time, investment, and stability, three things that are currently in short supply. This means the stranded trains may remain in limbo much longer than expected. Every day they sit idle represents thousands of dollars in losses, disrupted contracts, and growing frustration inside transportation companies. The people most affected are those working in the logistics and rail industries. Train drivers, station operators, freight handlers, and logistical managers are reporting confusion, stress, and uncertainty. They are stuck in a situation where they cannot move forward or go back. Companies have told passengers and clients that there is no clear timeline for resolution. The longer these trains sit, the more pressure builds across the entire network. Some drivers have been waiting for days with limited facilities, while others are being asked to stand by indefinitely. It is a reminder of how geopolitical decisions directly impact everyday workers. In Russia, the situation is being portrayed as another example of conflict with the West. Russian media outlets are emphasizing the inconvenience, delays, and financial harm caused by the shutdown. They are painting Poland's move as aggressive and unfriendly, further reinforcing the narrative of Russia being targeted by Western policies. This messaging is likely aimed at building domestic support and shifting blame away from Moscow. At the same time, Russian businesses are urging the government to find a diplomatic or logistical solution quickly, as the costs continue to rise. Belarus is facing its own internal pressure. The country has been economically isolated for years, and transit fees from rail operations have played a significant role in keeping revenue flowing. Losing these fees adds more financial strain at a time when Belarus is already dealing with sanctions and reduced foreign investment. This border shutdown has also heightened tensions between Minsk and Warsaw, making it even harder to reach a compromise. The Belarusian leadership is searching for ways to regain leverage, but options are limited. Poland, meanwhile, is preparing for the long haul. Government officials have stated that the border crossings will remain shut until they believe the security risks have been fully addressed. They are emphasizing that national safety comes before economic convenience. Some Polish political voices argue that reopening the crossings without significant changes would only invite more pressure from Belarus. This signals that the standoff could last far longer than most companies are prepared for. If the situation escalates further, we could see even more restrictions or retaliatory measures from the countries involved. As the crisis unfolds, neighboring nations are watching carefully. Lithuania, Latvia, and Ukraine have all dealt with similar tensions with Belarus and Russia. These countries understand how quickly border issues can spiral into broader disputes. Some of them may consider reinforcing their own border controls in response to Poland's actions, especially if they believe political pressure is being directed their way. This creates a chain reaction that could reshape transportation routes across all of Eastern Europe. Looking ahead, the future of the Belarus land bridge is uncertain. Even if the crisis is resolved, trust between the involved nations has been deeply damaged. Businesses may be reluctant to rely again on routes that can be shut down overnight. European companies might diversify their supply lines to reduce risk, while Russia may increase efforts to develop trade corridors that bypass Poland and Belarus altogether. The shutdown may push Russia to deepen ties with Eastern partners and alternative markets, further shifting regional alliances. At the same time, European countries might accelerate the development of new rail and port infrastructure to avoid dependence on politically sensitive routes. Another major question is whether this crisis will spill over into other sectors. When major trade routes are disrupted, political tensions can quickly escalate into sanctions, retaliatory measures, or coordinated responses from alliances. We could see diplomatic efforts increase in the coming weeks, but we could also see hardline policies that make cooperation even more difficult. The decisions made now will shape regional stability for months, if not years. The situation also highlights how interconnected the world is. A decision made at one border crossing in Europe can affect markets on the other side of the globe. It shows that transportation routes are not just physical pathways, they are political, strategic, and economic lifelines. When one of them closes, it sends shockwaves through multiple industries. This crisis is a reminder that global stability depends not only on trade agreements, but also on geopolitical cooperation, trust, and diplomacy. As the trains continue to sit idle, every country involved is calculating its next moves. Russia is seeking ways to minimize losses and secure alternative trade paths. Belarus is trying to regain political leverage and economic stability. Poland is prioritizing security while managing the diplomatic fallout. The European Union is trying to balance its support for member states with the need to avoid large-scale disruption. Meanwhile, businesses and workers are stuck in the middle of a crisis that they cannot control. In the end, the shutdown of the Belarus land bridge is more than a transportation issue. It is a powerful symbol of the geopolitical divide shaping Eastern Europe. It shows how political decisions can disrupt economies, supply chains, and daily life in an instant. And it serves as a warning that regional tensions remain high, with long, lasting consequences for all sides. and even your genes. If you found this explanation helpful, make sure to stay tuned for more updates as the situation develops. Thanks for watching.